So I have to share with our audience. I have always aspired to be a talk show hostess, and nobody will give me a talk show. So today I'm going to be Oprah. Okay? Will you be Gail?
I'm Dr. Phil, I guess.
Okay. All right.
Or maybe Tom Cruise. Jump around the stage.
Jump around on the stage.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get started. So many people are curious about your career journey. You've been a serial entrepreneur, but in late 2020, you joined ATPCO as our Chief Executive Officer, and
Yes.
we want to know why. We're happy, but we'd like to know why. Why don't you explain that?
I ask myself that question every day. No, no. In all seriousness, two things. The first is I love this industry. I think for everybody in the audience, if you've been in, when I say this industry, I don't mean travel. I mean the airline industry specifically. My very first company, literally out of college, we had major airlines, and Travelocity as customers. Obviously, I was the first person at Orbitz, the online travel agency, and then G2. So it gets in, it gets in you. It becomes a part of you, and so there's that. The other is, I don't know quite how to say this, but I joined a company called VHT as the CEO in 2009, exactly when it was a real estate marketing company, exactly when the entire real estate market in the United States collapsed in 2009. I joined as CEO, and what you learn is in times of change like that is when people start to think there might be other ways of doing this. I had to try something different because the ways I've been historically doing it are not working anymore because the system isn't working anymore. So coming in the middle of COVID, I really thought was a really good and interesting time to come because things are going to change. They have to change. Mm-hmm. In fact, in the real estate industry, by the time we left, there's no consumers who buy real estate the way they used to. It used to be you go to a real estate agent and they are the connection to the MLS and they show you the houses. And now you still might use a real estate agent, but you have been on Zillow probably for 2 months before you've ever talked to a real estate agent. Mm-hmm. So you know the market, you know what you're looking for, you know what the price points are. It fundamentally, 2009, that was the demarcation of a fundamental rethinking and change of behavior. So it almost feels like I'm coming into it again, and we're kind of at that precipice again, which is just a super exciting thing to be in.
It is. And what I didn't know, you shared it yesterday, that your exposure to travel started very young with your mom owning a travel agency. I didn't realize that until you told that story yesterday. So once you joined, what would you say were your top priorities for the company, for our employees, for our customers, for our partners?
Well, obviously, January I became the CEO, and I think this is probably for most people, number one priority is we needed to make sure that our people were safe, that things were okay. Number two our customers were okay, and we were continuing to do the right things for them. We were in an incredibly uncertain time, and I think by then it had lasted significantly longer than anybody had anticipated. In fact, it started to look like it was going back into the dark ages again, given the resurgence of COVID in the winter. So those are kind of priorities. Number one, you almost don't even have time to think about the big stuff because the here and now becomes the most important.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember thinking when we first went home, it'd be 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. Right, everybody thought that.
And here we are, still in it.
Yeah, actually our CFO tells a funny but sad story, which we, ATPCO actually in March of 2020, when it just started, they signed a very big, expensive lease with WeWork. Thinking, oh, it's just going to be a couple weeks and everybody's going to be back at the office. And then, a year later, we're paying WeWork
right.
for a whole lot of facilities we aren't using. So, that was the common belief for most folks.
Yeah. Have you been surprised with the pace of recovery of the airline industry?
Yes and no. I'm talking to an industry that has been here a long time. Travel for a certain part of the population it's a primal urge. And when you suppress it artificially, like what happened in COVID, it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody that when it opened up, people were going to take advantage of it because, you can only sit in your basement for so long before it's time to get out. And I think as we witnessed at Elevate this year, that human connection and human interaction, it's hard to replace. Zoom is good, but it's not a replacement for it. So no, I was not surprised at the volume of the demand. I think I probably didn't appreciate the operational complexities of literally shutting down an industry and bringing back up. That is just significantly more complex than anybody anticipated.
Than anybody could have anticipated or imagined. No, you're right. So when the pandemic hit, ATPCO is proud to have created some few innovative solutions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I guess I should say that preceded me. So this is ATPCO DNA. It's not Alex. The company sprang into action with they had acquired Root Happy by then, and instantly they started to provide both structural UPAs and reassurance UPAs. We had over 300 airlines that we made reassurance UPAs. Everybody in our community participation. We provided basic reassurance UPAs. We provided structured UPAs pro bono, basically for everybody for free. So that the public would know and understand what the new rules were. In fact, in some areas like exchange rules and things like that, we even did the language conversion, I think 6 or 7 languages for all of the airlines to make sure that the new rules and the new normal became understood for everybody, so that there wasn't confusion in the traveling public. Again, that's one of the advantages of having a utility like ATPCO in the center that's really here for the industry, not just here for itself.
Can you explain some of the innovations that we're focused on now to help elevate the industry?
Yeah, I think if you, we talked about some of them the last few days. If you take kind of our intro where we're talking about new proof of concepts, we provided that first, we'll call it the Airline Maturity Index, where we're actually taking real data of what airlines are doing. I think that this is really, you're going to see ATPCO do a couple new things. One is, I believe that we as ATPCO have to do a better job of helping airlines get through the maturity model of what's already capable in the industry today, so that when new things become ready, that they are ready as an organization to take advantage of that. So us kind of doubling down in our own products and services to make it easier, to make it simpler for airlines to take advantage of more sophisticated capability within the ecosystem that already exists. The second is helping the ecosystem that doesn't quite exist yet evolve in a way that, and this is a core ATPCO belief, we believe that there has to be some interoperability, because there will be many airlines that are going to live in both worlds for longer than I think anybody wants. So we need to make sure that that these two things can stand together. And the second is ATPCO, I think historically has, when we did something new, we got broad and general agreement from everybody before we started. And then when we started, it became a Manhattan-like project in which we built from scratch. What we're trying to do with some of these proof of concepts now is let's do some trials. Let's do some minimum viable products. Let's see if this has value to the industry before we make the massive investment of infrastructure required, because there are many paths to the future that we're talking to. I, as Alex, and we as ATPCO, we don't pretend that we have the answer, but we think that we can be part of the answer. So you're going to see more of these proof of concepts. You're going to see more of these design groups in which we collaborate, and maybe we stand something up and see if this is going to work as the way. And sometimes it might not. This is also new ATPCO. We might shut some things down if we think it's not going to help us get to where we need to be. I think, I know, within ATPCO, when we pivoted the NBC product, I'll just say that there was a tectonic shift for the company inside the organization, because once we have ever gone public with a particular product, we don't ever kill it. It never ceases to exist. That's something that the company has not ever done. Mm-hmm. So when we start to do these things, I think we have to be more transparent about, is this a proof of concept, or is this actually something real, and be clear with customers about what it is we're asking them to participate in going forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you think about leading a company that where we want to bring more value to the industry, thinking about your career, like what would you say was the most important lesson or experience you've had that prepared you to lead this company? I want to know why you qualified.
I'll give you two answers.
Yeah.
The first one is, I remember back in my days at Orbitz when we were working with ITA, and literally everybody told us, what you are trying to do, we want to actually compute every single possibility. We want to create a matrix display for everybody. Everybody said, this is not possible. It's not going to work. Availability is going to, and the willingness to go into the light in which, I'm looking in the back. I can't see the back at all, but I know it's there. Mm-hmm. So being willing to take that step forward into the light when the clarity of the path isn't there, but the value of the end is really important. That's something I've done for most of my life. Now, I'll say in my younger days, I did it with my head down, just banging into walls, and it works in some ways, but it creates a lot of chaos. Yeah,
and issues for me and my job.
And issues for everybody. So I've gotten probably a little bit better at that. And actually, I'd say, my time, I said this at the last, my time at Hyatt, I was executive vice president there, and the average tenure at that level, it's just the direct reports of the CEO, was 37 years. So you had an incredibly strong culture. It was a family-owned business until recently. How do you navigate inside of something that has such power, but still try and bring something new and marry those things together? If you can do that successfully, you can actually create something great. So my goal of ATPCO is not to kill ATPCO. I think there are some people that have a misconception there, is to bring all of what is great with ATPCO with all of what is great with the possibilities in the future, and fuse those things together in a way that helps everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. And a good segue to my next question. So pivot is a buzzword that has been overused for the last few years in our industry and literally around the world. What advice would you give our audience today about keeping the ship steady as the industry continues to navigate this recovery?
Well, I'd be careful about that word steady. The problem with keeping things steady is then everything's okay and you don't have to change. But
What word would you prefer to use?
That's a good question. The way I like to think about it is people don't always see the light, but they do feel the heat. So you need a little bit of unsteadiness there because that's what gets people to really drive to the next, to the next phase and the next capability. So within ATPCO, I'll tell you some inside baseball things. We have a set of KPIs with our board. We didn't say it, but we threw up, these long-term goals, 80% dynamic, and more than one of you last night said, no way, that's not gonna happen. I will tell you that one of our KPIs with our board includes those LRPs, and if we don't hit those milestones, my bonus is at stake. So we're kind of putting our money where our mouth is here. Because if we keep it steady, if we can just say those things, but there's no consequences if we don't get there, we're never going to do the work required to really help the industry going forward.
How confident are you in the resilience of the flying public?
Oh, the flying public, they can't be denied. I've learned that through, those of us that were around even all the way back to 9/11.
Yeah.
If you remember when the entire airspace of the country was shut down and people were afraid to travel, it took a little while, but it was shorter than I thought it was going to be. People, again, it's this primal urge. People want to travel. They want to see each other. They want new experiences. And in some ways, the next generation, this is even more true. Experiences are starting to become more important than physical products and ownership. So they'd rather spend money on a spring vacation than they would on buying a car. So from that perspective, we're in a really good place.
Yeah, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what would your prediction be in the next 12 months? What would this look like?
No, I don't have a prediction. I'm not even sure I know what I want for dinner, let alone what's going to happen. Again, if I put my ATPCO hat on, it is how can we help? We still have 125 airlines that are in that lower left-hand part of that quadrant. How can we really help them go forward? And those 11 airlines that are already doing dynamic pricing, they're doing adjustments off of what they file from ATPCO today, how can we continue to help them do trials in ways that allows them to really gain experience, but not require them to really rebuild every single piece of infrastructure in their portfolio to even start a trial. So how can we get the best without having to do everything?
What, when you think about the industry over the next 12 months and what we need to achieve, what would you identify as the greatest barriers?
Well, this is true of every organization. It's true of ATPCO too, and it's something that's hard. It's even hard for me, which is when you're doing something new, you just can't add it to the pile of the things that you're doing. You have to stop some things. So the question is, what do you stop doing so that you can start doing something new? And the second you stop doing something, for the folks that have been doing it a long time, that it's like, are you telling me what I've been doing for 10 years is not valuable? It's like, no, that's not what we're saying at all. We're actually just saying something else is more valuable. So having a willingness to say, we need to stop doing some things so we can start doing other things becomes incredibly important, because you can't keep adding and thinking that it's all going to work.
Yeah.
It's not.
And so being intentional with like
Very intentional.
prioritization, exercises.
That's right.
So that you make these decisions.
It's not just prioritization. It's there's actually exercises like start-stop exercises, which is, okay, let's identify what we really need to do. Here's all the things we're doing. What is it that we need to stop? And sometimes it doesn't mean stopping. It might mean that you stop doing it because you have the experience and knowledge to be able to do this. So maybe that means outsourcing. Maybe that means automating. Maybe that means, bringing it to a third party or handing it off to a different group. Stopping can mean a lot of things, but that intentional stopping is really required in order to put something new on your plate.
And speaking of intentionally stopping, we got to stop.
Ah.
All right. Thank you.
Good timing.
Thank you, Alex,
Thank
for
you.
sharing all
Thanks,
your
Maya.
insights.
Take care.